very much. It's great to be here, and I'm going to get right down to it and talk with you about weed management systems in nurseries, crop production. And we're going to also discuss, obviously, a little bit of the work that we've been doing with the new product from BASF trade name FreeHand. But we're going to start out with just a general discussion of weed management systems in nursery crops. And I want to frame it in the context that all of the development of weed management systems is about having an economically efficient program. And weeds are costing you money. And they're costing money in lots of different ways. The dollar cost for the herbicides, that's no surprise. You know, when you buy a bag of herbicide, it's expensive. Okay? You've also got your application cost, your labor, your equipment costs. The supplemental hand weeding is, of course, one of the biggest expenses associated with it. But also remember that if you're not doing a good job controlling your weeds, you're losing money by the loss of the nutrients, which actually, when we looked at the amount of nutrients lost in the weeds we pulled from nursery stock, it was somewhere on the order of a few cents per pot. Start adding that up with the number of containers you're growing, and it becomes significant. And of course, there's opportunity costs. It's like when your crew is out there hand weeding, they're costing you money, they're not making you money. Okay, so weeds cost you a lot. As I said, when you go out and buy Regal K, OH2, Snapshot, you're spending anywhere $185, $260 per acre per treatment. And if you work that out on a per pot basis, you'll see that our major herbicides are costing you really only about 5 cents, less than 10 cents per container. Okay, so it doesn't sound like a lot initially. It doesn't sound like a lot, but again, multiply that out by the number of containers you have on an acre, and those numbers become very significant. But a much more significant component of the cost, as you know, is your labor, actual labor cost. You may be paying your employees, $6, $8, $10 an hour, but remember that's not the total cost. You have all of the other costs, and the actual cost based on numbers from our ag economists somewhere closer to $12 to $15 an hour is what that weeding crew is costing you. Nitrogen, and as I said, so what do the weeds cost you? The herbicide's running about a nickel a pot. Nitrogen fertilizer lost through the weeds is somewhere around 4 cents per container. Hand weeding costing up to 40 cents per pot. And then, of course, you've got to have a question of marketability of these crops if you're not doing a great job with your weed control. So the question is, and what I want to talk about is, how do we control these costs? Well, number one is through an effective weed management program. Here's an example of we went out and did our trials on weed control at a nursery, and we hand weeded the untreated. If we used no herbicides, in this one weeding event, we pulled 135 pounds of weeds, and it took 61 man-hours to do it. Okay? With an effective pre-emergence program at that same site, we only had 3 pounds of weeds. It took less than 1 man-hour to control those weeds and to pull them out. So that is an obvious savings. And when we looked at this across a lot of herbicides, 7 different nursery sites where we did this, we get this profile to see just how costly weed management is. And these costs are a combination of labor as well as the herbicides and the application costs. And this is just to show you relative impact of an effective weed management program. Here's your hand weeding. If you did nothing at all, this is how much it was costing based upon these dollar figures over about 40 cents per pot approximately. Regal K, which I consider to be a somewhat effective herbicide. It's good on some weeds, not so good on others, and so you're controlling a lot of weeds, but it's missing a few, and you see that reflected in the hand weeding cost So that was not quite as good as our most effective treatments at these nurseries that year. OH2, that was our most effective treatment. And even though things like Snapshot, OH2, Regal OO were more expensive than these other herbicides, the total cost of weed management is down because they were more effective on the weeds that were at that site. So when we want to develop a weed management program, we're going to include a lot of parts. We're going to need to know about the weeds. So we've got to, if we're going to choose a herbicide, we need to know what weeds we're targeting. So we've got to identify them. We've got to use sanitation to reduce the amount of weed pressure in the nursery. We're going to use pre-emergence herbicides, maybe some post, and of course we're never going to get away from some hand weeding.